Welcome to the show, my beautiful friend and soul sister Taryn. It's such a blessing to have you here for season two. I wanted to have you on season one, but with the caliber and the potency of conversations I've been having with season two, I feel like divine timing, as always. You've landed on the Sunshine Coast in Australia and you're ready and able to have this recording, and it's just divine. So, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, I hope I can just contribute to the same caliber. I feel like there's a little bit of pressure, but I trust, of course, in the timing of things. So, yeah, really excited to have a beautiful conversation with you, my friend.
So you are, for those who maybe don't know you and don't know your work, you're a women's holistic pelvic physiotherapist, feminine embodiment guide, and you're the author of, and I have it right here, Body Conscious Woman. And this is, what would we call, the second edition, or what would you describe it as?
I would describe it, yes, perhaps as a second edition or the evolution of Body
Mm.
Conscious. Yeah.
Beautiful. And it's Body Conscious Woman. Come home to your body, discover your feminine wisdom, and create an aligned life. And if you are watching the video of this, then it is a juicy, juicy book. As you can see, there's many, many, many pages of wisdom here. And in this book, you speak about embodied feminine energy, feminine seasons and cycles, holistic pelvic health, and abundant living. I want to chat to begin with about this journey for you, because really your journey from physiotherapist in mainstream healthcare through to what you're doing now really is the embodiment of the social change in holistic healthcare for women that we are all striving for. I wonder if you can share what that journey has been like for you, coming from physiotherapist through to really women's health author.
And so touching for me is that this story is part of what I share at the start of this book. And I've had quite a few women reach out and say, you are speaking my language, we have walked the same path. And I feel like the biggest challenge for me was trying to sort of break outside of the boxes that we feel really confined to fit in, particularly when we're a health practitioner. And what we can see is this real need for a more holistic approach to healthcare, and particularly women's health, and including those facets that we just so deeply feel are required can feel really confronting, really challenging. It feels like we're pushing the bar, so to speak, and traversing a whole new way. So for me, it was this constant questioning of self, like, am I allowed to do this? Is this wrong against my profession? Is this in some way, it was just like, if I continued on the same path of a mainstream physiotherapist, I felt like I was doing such a disservice to myself and to other women, but also to stretch outside of the boxes and to go towards the path that I felt really aligned and called towards. It felt as though I really had to almost do something wrong against my profession. And in many ways, I've not. But I've included aspects that perhaps wouldn't be seen as usual or mainstream. So very hard, many nights, days, questioning myself, and yeah, I feel like I'm rambling on. Can we start again?
Not at all. You're not rambling at all. Not at all. I wonder when the desire to write a book came in. I wonder when the desire to really take all of the embodiment and the work that you were doing so beautifully with women in clinic and decide to put that into a book so that you were able to share that more broadly and more widely? Because, you know, we all are only one person. We can't, it's not possible for us to teach and share and guide and work with every woman on this planet. And that's where things like books, you know, webinars, even social media information, it's where we can use these channels of communication to really allow the work to move out into the world and reach the women that it needs to reach. So what was your experience of deciding, you know what, I think I want to write a book and put this wisdom into text?
Yeah, so there were a couple of times where I thought I really want to write a book, and I didn't even know what the book would be about, and so I started to write a book, and I quickly knew, well, this is not a book. This is definitely not the makings of a book, and I put that to the side many times. And then I remember very specifically the day we were on the Great Ocean Road at Wye River with my family, and we were actually having a fire on the beach, just enjoying watching the children play. And it was a clear communication that I was to write a book. And I felt like, wow, it did feel that time like a true calling, like something that I hadn't thought up consciously in my own mind, but more like a message from the divine, if you will. And so I just started writing with no idea of how you put not just the words onto a page, but how do you bring all of what's within you and make it concise and make it flow in a way that feels, you know, meaningful to a reader, but also makes sense to a reader. And so I just began, and I would type on my laptop, I would type notes in my phone, just in any moment of time, because of course then I was a mother of two, and I was, you know, at home with them full time, mostly at that time. And so I would just do it in the pockets of time when I felt inspired, similar to how I still do all of my work, and then began collating it. And again, with no idea how, which is mostly how I've done a lot of my work, is just finding like the next best step and the next best step until I, you know, published the first Body Conscious. And that was released the same week that I had my third child, my son. And the evolution, I guess, of that continued when I was wanting again to write another book, or what I thought was another book, and again started writing and writing. And what I really quickly realized was that this isn't a new book, but just the extension or evolution of Body Conscious. And so, of course, I've gone through that process almost twice, but with a little bit more understanding the second time around of what I'm writing. And what I really love is that what I share in my book is not what I feel is my wisdom, because I've spent so much time with other women, both in a, you know, holistic clinical setting, but also simply having my own business and working alongside women like yourself. We are gathering all of the stories and wisdom from other women and their body wisdom that they share with me. And I really love that then we can bring together the similarities that we have, or the same feelings that you know, living inside of us, and put them down into words on a page. And I really like the process for me of putting words onto a page, because it's a very inward process rather than being always outward and connecting, you know, with other women, which I absolutely love. But I also really love that way of getting words onto a page and that self-expression down, then to be able to share, you know, in that way. I really do enjoy that process.
In your book, you really beautifully describe, not directly necessarily, although I think there is a section from memory where you actually do describe, you know, the body conscious way of being and of living in the world. And you do speak about, you know, who the body conscious woman is. But for those who haven't read the book yet, what is body conscious? Why body conscious for you? How did this come into form? And then who is the body conscious woman? Who are we speaking to here? Because when I think about the body conscious woman and I look at it through your lens, which you'll describe, I really see that there's aspects of her in all of us, right? There's aspects of her in all of us, and it's about being able to pinpoint those. But how would you describe who she is?
Well, absolutely, she is alive within all of us. And really, the body conscious woman is the woman who connects to herself, her body, her inner wisdom, her inner knowing, and uses this wisdom to guide her life and her choices, and really sits with herself and knows what she values and what she contributes to the world. And it's about, when I talk about coming home to your body, I really do feel that our body has strong wisdom to offer us. And when we can listen to her, things feel so much more simple, so much more easy. And even though the guidance might feel, again, like I was talking about when I started this work, it was pulling me over here and this is my comfort zone. But once I was led in that direction, there was just no turning back. And to me, it's living the essence of who we are and what we were really brought to this earth to share. And it's trusting in ourselves is, I think, the biggest part is knowing ourselves and trusting ourselves and knowing that we are supported in our vision, and what we have to share is really important.
Yeah, I agree. And my sense is, as I think about women that I've worked with, you know, women who will be listening to this podcast who also work with other women, so yoga teachers, therapists, other health practitioners who also work with women, you know, there's a lot of women in the world who have lost that connection back to self, and to then be able to work with practitioners and therapists and teachers who really offer those tools and those pathways back to that reconnection, I think is really powerful. And in your book, you speak about how the modern world has caused a disconnect to a woman's center, and in many cases has been the catalyst then for her abandoning the core of who she is, which is what you're speaking to here. So I want to read a piece from the book and then have you reflect on that. In the book, you say, through the suppression of our softness, slowness, stillness, and simplicity, the fierce forms of the feminine remain undernourished. We have tried to fit ourselves into a tight, suffocating box, living in ways that uphold someone else's values. We've let go of the rituals and traditions that once nourished our physical, emotional, and spiritual center. When we spend our lives fighting the natural beauty of our body, dismissing its wisdom, we feel undervalued, undernourished, unexpressed, and overwhelmed. And when I hear these words, I really feel into the witnessing of our collective nervous system as women being dysregulated and overwhelmed. And so I wonder, as you hear your own words reflected back to you, how do we start to break this cycle? Because I really do see it as a cycle and one that needs a circuit breaker so that we can start to move towards the change that we all desire to see.
And I really think the beginning of it is to see it for what it is, or to recognize the aspects of self of when we are acting from a place of should, or allowing somebody else to have such a strong opinion or determination over how we live or how we be in our bodies. And once we can see that and acknowledge that, we can see all of the ways that we kind of bow down to how we should rather than how we know. And this is, there's so many aspects to this, but, even thinking about what we consider beauty is very much around, hiding the signs of aging, being a particular size and shape. How do we move our body in a feminine way? Well, that needs to look like this. And all of those shoulds, I guess, when we unravel all of those and we come back to our center, we realize that all of these unwritten and often written rules are actually rules that we don't need to live by, and they are the constructs that we want to burn down so that we can see the world that we wish to be living in, one where each person is really valued and seen for their wholeness, one where we can contribute our gifts, and without this self-criticism that runs on repeat for so many women, where we can take back our power. It goes to from the moment of conception, how women are put on the clock of, having monitoring of, and tests and things like that. And I'm not one to, for a moment, say that our medical systems aren't of value, because I think they really, really are, and can be super supportive when we are offered a sense of autonomy, and when we really have an understanding and there is true consent rather than a pushing upon us, and then we have to say or feel like we need to say yes to certain things that feel within every cell of our body wrong. So I really look at the time from when we are conceived to birth, and how we we can do things so much more intuitively, like breastfeeding our babies, for example. Sometimes we feel like it needs to be on the clock and needs to be monitored, and the sleep and wake cycle of a child and all of those things. And when you see it from, from that instance to the evolution of ourselves as we grow, the amount of times that we're really living by, this external 24-hour clock, or, and when I'm talking about this clock, I'm not talking about necessarily just the days and turning up to work at a particular hour and time and all of those sorts of things, but I'm also talking about how we live our life, and we feel like by a particular age we should have achieved a particular thing, get married, have children, buy a home, and all of those things are not wrong, and they're fine, and they're beautiful and wonderful. But yeah, it's just when you see it and you think, wow, how many times in my life have I acted in a way or from a place of this is expected, either from other people, or that something I've subscribed to makes me have this expectation of myself, rather than living in a way that I truly, truly want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder when women, because there has to be a willingness, there has to be the awareness initially for women to even see that the way that they're moving through their lives is one that is, human conditioning behavior that's been modeled to us, etc. We don't know what we don't know. So we can move through different aspects of our life cycle and have experiences and not know that that there is even an alternative option. So I think there's kind of one sort of stream of thought over here is that a lot of the system needs to change and shift to provide ample information for women to feel empowered, to have the right information to make informed consent, to have that body autonomy. There's a whole piece over here that needs to shift. But then on this other stream of thought that I sense is that there's also needs to be a level of willingness and awareness from the woman's response as well. There has to be a level of self awareness and also radical self-responsibility to ask the questions and to seek the information and to ascertain if there is another alternative or approach to the same situation. So let's assume that the woman is at that place where she's starting to ask questions. Well, maybe there is another alternative. Maybe there is another way. Maybe my experience, wasn't so normal, or rather it was normal, but maybe normal's, not the right way. Maybe there's a different way for me in my body and with my experience. For those women who are ready and willing, where does one begin? Because we know that we are so heavily marketed to for change this about yourself and you're not worthy here, but I've got the answer and I can sell this to you. How do women navigate this enormous billion-dollar women's health, self-development? How do we navigate this industry that's constantly bombarding us with messages of how we should be feeling, how we should be experiencing the feminine, how we should be experiencing our bodies? How does a woman begin to start to navigate all of that?
And it is a wonderful question. And I think this is where the sense of overwhelm can kick in of it is so big. How do I begin to make the change? And I love how you're saying on one side it's the systems that need to change, but I also feel like women are the ones who will ultimately change the systems, because when we connect back to ourselves, then our response becomes different, and then the system changes in response to our changing response. And I feel like what feels most simple and accessible to you, what is perhaps the biggest the challenge, where is the most tension within your life at the moment, is often the place that is calling you the strongest to bring your awareness and some kind of change to. And it feels like such a big question with such a simple answer. The answer is to connect into self, and how that looks is different for every woman. But when you come back into yourself, when you tune into your inner knowing, the answers will reveal themselves. And sometimes it feels like the answer is so far away from the question, but we need to be willing to sit in the silence or the discomfort or well, that doesn't seem right, and how could I possibly, and start there and start, chipping away at the pieces. And yeah, I feel like it is, begin where you are, if that kind of makes sense. And it seems like, wow, well, how for me is always the impossible question to answer, because I feel like that is the one that brings all of the overwhelm and like, but how? So let's take the how away and just tune in and let the answers arise.
In your book, you share a plethora of beautiful practices that women can try and start to explore and experiment with to try to find one that feels most deeply resonant for them. What's your go-to practice at the moment? Because I know we're really similar in that it's always meeting the need of the hour. It's always shifting and changing based on what we need in any given moment or season that we find ourselves in. What's your go-to practice for tuning in deeply to allow for those answers to arise from within?
Another great question with so many answers that there's never really just one. But for me, what I'm most called to usually is movement. And it's interesting because I find so much stillness in movement, stillness in the mind, and a sense of stillness in the body, even though there is this, momentum happening. But it is that really mindful movement where we can connect in with self, that for me can switch off all of the noise, you know, that exterior noise, and help me to really feel into, you know, what's important to me, where am I being drawn to respond or not act within my life. For women who I'm facilitating, you know, for the first time to tune into their body, and particularly, you know, womb space is the deep core connection practice. And that is really the, I guess, the tuning in part of many of the practices that I share, which is really a simple breath practice, feeling the movement of our core with our breath. And to me, I mean, I write a lot about it within the book, but the way that the body will show you its wisdom by simply, you know, feeling that movement, to me is just so profound. But it's this, you know, connecting into our center and feeling that beautiful, gentle movement of the center, the ebb and the flow, the softness and the strength, all of those aspects that then we can begin to ask our body questions. Or when I say our body, I'm not talking just about our physical body as well, where, yeah, that's really the access point where then women can broaden from there. And to me, when I'm witnessing women tune in that way, it's, you know, you have to see it to believe it kind of thing, where the wisdom that just, you know, bursts out is so profound. And I've sat with many a woman who just say to me, I had no idea this is how I felt, or I had no idea that this answer sat within me. And it is just a simple tuning in, breathe, allow the answer to be there or not be there. And it might not come in that moment, but, you know, how many ever days, weeks, whatever, it could be months, but the answer will be there. So for me, that's my kind of go-to, at least beginning tuning in for women, and movement, of course, always for myself.
It's such a beautiful practice, and it's so simple. And I really love that about all of the practices that you share. There is a simplicity to them that allows for, one, accessibility. So it doesn't matter what stage a woman is in her life cycle. It doesn't matter about any health concerns she may have. It doesn't matter on lifestyle. It doesn't matter on social status. These practices are available to every single woman currently in the human form, which I think is, you know, a huge aspect of making this work available to women. And something I was thinking about as you were speaking was that we don't have to look to the peak experience to find the answers. We can use a simple practice, as you've just described. Those ones can often have the most potency behind them, and it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to go and see someone doesn't have the magic answer. It's not something that's coming from outside of you, and it doesn't require some huge peak experience that you then need to integrate for the next 3 months to find the answer. And I think that's such an important aspect of actually really creating the change that we wish to see, because accessibility is a huge issue and a huge barrier for women in this space.
100%. There is no special tool or object or item that you would need. And then again, that is another reason for the book, is that, you know, it is costly to go and see perhaps a women's pelvic floor physiotherapist. And I am really of the understanding, if we can teach, or the belief that if we can teach women to simply understand their own body, and, you know, there's such power in that. And we really do know so much more about ourselves and can intuitively navigate our way far better than a lot of us do understand.
Mm,
And a lot of the time when we are seeking professional guidance and support,
mm,
which I highly respect and highly
mm,
regard as well, but often when we're getting in, we're seeing seeking support and we're doing all of the right things,
mm,
the actual piece that is missing is that inner connection and that inner guidance and the
mm,
body's guidance. And that was my personal experience when I was having huge pelvic pain after having my second child, and I was seeing a women's pelvic floor therapist. I was having
mm,
acupuncture, I was taking Chinese medicine, I was doing my regular movement, and I
mm,
was doing all of the right things, but the one piece that was missing was actually the deeply tuning to the body, and the answers were all sitting there.
mm,
And it was actually not that I needed to do any of those things that I was doing. It was actually
mm,
to shift my mindset, shift my
mm,
self-talk, offer myself some slowness, stillness, self-compassion, self-love,
mm,
take down all of the expectations that I had of being a certain at a certain point in my postpartum recovery. And once all of that shifted, magically, and not so
mm,
magically, but of course, my pelvic pain um, dissipated. And so often, I think that's the thing, is that we're using all of the tools and seeking all of the support externally, but
mm,
the one missing piece is that tuning back into self, and what shows from there is often, in my experience, that's where the real gems are,
mm,
and where the healing really takes place.
mm. Yeah, it's like that. I posted about this yesterday, I think it was, that we have to have the tools and the practice alongside of and integrated with the wisdom. And I think that's what you do so beautifully, is you offer the practices, but alongside of that, all of the wisdom and the education and the knowledge around our body as a woman, and then also then flowing into what does the feminine mean to the individual, and how does that then translate into their daily experience. And so I'd love to go in that direction now to speak about the feminine through your lens, because again, we have really been marketed what the feminine is, through this billion-dollar self-care industry around, the feminine looking a particular way. And I think it's really important to continually give voice to and name that the feminine is very much an individual experience and expression. And so I would love for you to speak to the feminine through your lens.
I love that, those words of the feminine is your own essence, your own experience, and your own, yeah, expression. And I have lived in those shoes where we feel like certain aspects of ourselves are unwelcome or unfeminine.
Mm,
For example, my most easy example is I love to run, I love to
mhm,
lift weights, I love to do what a lot of people would term masculine movement,
mm,
and that if I was doing that, then I was suppressing my feminine in some way, and that
mm,
I was acting from a masculine space.
mm,
And I think this whole masculine feminine thing is, it's taking away often that sense of wholeness. And for me,
mm,
the feminine really is that sense of wholeness of self, where
mm,
all is welcome, all is part of you, um, and and I think what it comes down to is only we will know. So how will I put this? If if we're tuning into our wholeness and acting from this space, then that is our expression and
mm,
embodiment of our feminine.
mhm,
If we tune into our wholeness and we feel as though I need to erase that part of me, I need to suppress that
mm,
part, I should be, showing this part more, then that for me is where both the divine masculine and the divine feminine within is somehow being suppressed. And so I really think that's what it is. It's the sense of wholeness and the welcoming of all and the expression of that. And it's really hard to say, is this a masculine element of myself or a feminine, but because often it is the feminine aspects of self that we do suppress, but without the masculine, like, it doesn't exist either. So it's it's not like we need to write and define, I don't think, what is the feminine, but when we can feel our wholeness and connect to that, that's when the beautiful integration is happening, and the expression of that integration comes to life.
Yeah, like we get to write what it looks like and what our expression is of it. And I have been doing something really similar in my own practice of moving away even from compartmentalizing the masculine and the feminine and saying this is masculine energy and this is feminine energy and this is more masculine practice and this is more feminine practice, and really seeing them as one in the same, that there actually is no separation. And so, because often, as we both know, often the masculine is defined as male and feminine is defined as female, and we know that it's actually beyond, it actually moves beyond the realm of physicality, and we're actually looking at energetics when we're talking about the masculine and the feminine. And through the yoga teachings, we speak about Shiva and Shakti, the Shiva being the more of the masculine energy and the Shakti being the more feminine essence. But even in that description, I've started to even move away from even defining them as that and actually speaking to them more as Shiva and Shakti, which takes away any preconceived ideas that we have of what the masculine and the feminine actually is, and speak more about the integration of the two, so that we really can see, as you've described, the wholeness of our experience, that we are the expressions of all things and that all things carry these energies. And it's about allowing the refinement of the ones that need more nourishment at any given time. And that's really what you speak to in the quote that I used from your book around, a lot of the feminine forms remain undernourished. So there's a lot of these expressions of consciousness that remain undernourished. And what I'm hearing from you is that it's then about finding those aspects of self and really tending to them, watering that aspect of our gardening, allowing those aspects of self to really flourish.
Absolutely. And this is a really easy example that I shared recently, where I was hiking this mountain. It's really steep and I can see it outside the window here. And as I hike, and it begins to get really hard and my breathing's labored and my legs are burning, one might say, she's really pushing her masculine self. And when it gets hard, my mind goes to, we can do this. And it's like that push, that extra push. And in that, though, that was part of me that was very well nourished. The part of me that says, I need a rest now. I need to take a break. Need to soften into this and be okay with, I don't need to, when I need to take a break, I don't need to criticize myself. I don't need to say, oh, you should have been able to continue on past that point. So that for me, I perhaps see as more of my feminine aspect, and the piece that needed tending to and nourishment. But the opposite can be true for many women, where that drive, that decision to, yes, I'm going to take the leap, I'm going to take the next step, I'm going to push through the discomfort. That might be the aspect that's less practice, and the rest and the stillness and the softness. But at the same time, when I think of that woman who is very well practiced in her stillness and softness, who has perhaps more challenge of breaking through those barriers, that is just as feminine to me, that barrier, and requires just as much feminine strength and nourishment to tend to that aspect as well. So as you're saying that, that's what comes to mind is like, yes, and it might be movement that we're talking about where we can really push ourselves through. And then in that aspect of relating to self, you know, there might be the rest that requires more nourishment. And then we take a look at another aspect of our lives. For example, it might be a relationship with our partner, and we might have completely different needs or parts of self that aren't expressed that are remaining undernourished. So when we look at our life too, it's not that in what I'm trying to say is it will look different depending on what the example we are giving ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Another aspect of your work is pelvic health. And you speak about and share about it being such an integral part of us being able to fully experience and allow the expression of our feminine to come forth in the world. Can you speak to why it's such an integral part and why so much of your work is centered around here?
So to me, you know, of course, anatomically, physiologically, the pelvic space is what holds, what makes us different essentially to men. And this is a space in our body that is the taboo subject. It is the suppressed aspect of self. It is something, an aspect of health that is often not discussed. And this is the space that holds so much of our wisdom and our power. We can see it through from the moment of menstruation to conception, pregnancy, birth. We are continually brought back to this space in our life. No matter what your experience of a woman, we might not move through all of these seasons and cycles, but we will all experience, you know, menstruation of some aspect all the way to menopause, and that is really an insight into the rhythm and cycle of a woman. And when we allow ourselves, again, even in our sexual expression and our sexuality, this is the place that is often we push everything down into when we have an experience that perhaps it wasn't fulfilling or nourishing, or that stripped out ourselves of our power in some way. This is often the space that we tuck it in and hide it away and push it to the depths of ourselves. And this, for me too, when we think of even in human movement, the deep core, the pelvic floor is the base of the deep core, and the deep core really is our foundation for movement. So in many ways, this is the foundation of our femininity and our foundation of our wholeness. And when we really look at it, you know, how we do shut it down, turn it off, cut it out, make it stop. This is what we're talking about, or what I like to, you know, help women to tap into, is that what happens when we don't shut it down, turn it off, make it secret. All of the power that you can then have access to starts to reveal itself.
A lot of shame, you also speak about, resides from these experiences of the suppression of this area of our bodies. How can we start to, it's such a big question too, but how can we even begin to start to peel back the layers of shame that reside in these you know, in the pelvic bowl?
Yes, it is such a big and such a great question. And I feel like it is always coming back to that awareness of noticing that it does exist. And the ways that it will show itself might be very different for each and every woman. You know, for me, one really highlighted experience of when I realized, wow, I really have shame around this, is when I was looking to more sustainable period products.
Mm,
And I was looking at reusable underwear,
mm,
period underwear, and I thought, oh, I was really turned off by the thought of having to wash them. And
mm,
that really highlighted to me that, oh, I'm associating my period blood with being dirty.
mm,
And the really interesting aspect about that was my background in healthcare and my ability to work with many other bodily fluids with no
mm,
sense of shame or disgust or anything like that.
mm,
um, and so, it's really looking at our experiences of and how we feel about them.
mm,
When I talk about birth and the shame that a lot of women hold around their birth experience,
mm,
um, often when a woman presents and she says, like, I'm having this pelvic pain or concern, what it might be,
mm,
and we look at all of the layers and we look at birth, for example, and I ask the question, how do you feel about your birth? Not tell me what happened, but how do
yeah,
you feel? And when she starts to articulate and express how she feels,
mm,
the tears come rolling down, the she starts to see herself and
mm,
see her experience and how she related to that. And again, the words are often, I didn't even realize this is how I
mm,
felt. And so when we can begin to see ourselves, and where the shame lies, that's when we can start to um, write a different story, as you said, of, how do I want this to be for me? How do I want to relate to this aspect of my body? So,
mm,
I mean, our periods is one, birth, of course,
mm,
how we mother, our sexuality.
mm,
There's a whole lot of shame that we hold within there as well.
mm,
Even just for so many women, this is a space in our body where we feel like we have to suck it in and hide it. It has to be flat and
mm,
small. And even just the process and the practice of putting the hands towards the lower abdomen or onto the womb
mm,
space is highly confronting. And to just even start there and feel into,
mm,
okay, how do I relate to this part of my body?
mm,
What feelings and emotions come up for me when I tune in or touch this space?
mm,
And that is can be very telling of how we relate. Um, and and then once we know that the shame is there,
mm,
then we can start to, yeah, break down those barriers. And again, there are many
mm,
different practices that could look
mm.
like, but it depends on what we feel drawn to.
Yeah, because there can often be, in my experience, there can be shame about having the shame as
Oh,
well, which then compounds it, and really does. I think that's where we really do then lean on the beautiful practices, the tools, and then seeking the external support if required to really feel supported in the unpacking of that shame and moving through the layers at a pace that feels safe and supportive for us as an individual woman.
yes. And I love that you've highlighted that, because the shame about feeling shame is just, that continual wronging of
Mm,
ourselves that we just
mm,
have so ingrained in us as women. And that, oh, well, I should be better than that. I should be moved
mm,
past this by now. And the truth is that I have not, I've not met a woman who it isn't a continual practice and an evolution.
mm,
And so it doesn't matter where we are at.
mm,
There is always growth to be had,
mm,
and this is the change that we are making and wishing to see in the world. And it won't end with me in this
mm,
lifetime, I am
mm,
sure. And that's why what I want to teach and pass down to my children is, for them to really celebrate and feel, whole in themselves and comfortable in their
mm,
skin. So it's like this is lifetimes of, and we've got
mm,
lifetimes to go yet. And I do imagine a world where it is so different,
mm,
but we don't need to wrong ourselves of the shame that we hold, because it's not even a product just of ourselves or the society that we
mm,
live in this day. It's, you know years and years, millennia
mm,
of
mm,
the shaming of women's bodies. So
mm.
lots of compassion and love to each and every one of us to,
Mm,
and just to be doing the work, just to be
mm,
curious is,
mm,
that's such a great start.
I think so too. I think to just have the willingness to do the work and to be doing it piece by piece, and there's no race, there's not even some sort of end goal that we need to even have in our awareness. It's just to actually be in the experience of the willingness to do the work, and that's perfect, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
100%.
You speak about in the book, you say to live alongside our feminine rhythm is not a luxury. It is a fundamental human right and essential to our livelihood. Can you expand on this?
Yes. And to me, it isn't a luxury. It's not I feel like, and our feminine rhythm, I feel like when I talk about it as our feminine rhythm, I am talking to our menstrual rhythm, the rhythm and
Mm,
cycles of pregnancy, birth, postpartum, all of
mm,
these aspects of self where we feel like we need to shut off our body systems so
mm,
that we can live in this world that that we do
mm,
exist in, and the world that we exist in really has us feel the shame
mm,
around needing recovery and rest time after giving birth, for example. These
mm,
beautiful, sacred, so important. And if we tended to them differently and we allowed ourselves to experience them for what they are, and gift ourselves the wisdom that they would be teaching us, to me, our world would look such a different place. And when I talk to this also, I mean, it's not just for women. Men feel
mm,
this same
mm,
challenge as well. And
mhm,
so, the suppression of their femininity and
mm,
their emotional aspects, I just feel like we live in a world of, you know, anxiety,
mm,
depression, guilt, shame, this
mm,
constant aroundness of criticism that we should be
mm,
better and should be different. And
mm,
really, where is that getting us other than to perpetuate a
mm,
world where we all feel that way? And
mhm,
so, to me, the fundamental human right is actually to go back to our roots, or to the root of what I perceive as, why are we even here?
mm,
Like, what are we doing here? And
mm,
to me, when I come back to that question, for me, life is about living life.
mm,
And so when we're taking away that freedom and that sense of self for each person, then we've taken away kind of the purpose of why we're here.
mm, mm. Yeah, you say in your vision that you shared with me as part of the prep for this conversation that you wish for women to really feel a sense of self-love that infiltrates into their lives in a way that creates a life and a lifestyle that feels vibrant, energized, peaceful, and free. And my sense is that that's exactly what you're saying here when you say that, to live alongside of our feminine rhythm is a fundamental human right, because it is a fundamental human right that everyone, men included, feel that level of vibrancy and peacefulness and freedom. And really that's ultimately what, I suppose if there was an end goal in your work in the world, the legacy that you wish to leave, it would really be that.
Yes. And I feel like what we, when we take away the right to live by our rhythm,
Mm,
we've taken away the sacredness of
mm,
life. And when we take away the sacredness, then we're kind of just going through the motions.
mm.
And
Yeah.
I would love, I just would love to see a world where you know, it doesn't take till we're 90 looking back and going, shit, I wish I would have done that differently, because
Mm,
like, let's just do it differently now.
yeah, yeah. I think it's about holding the long-term vision for that world. You know, we're doing the work. You know, there's so many women globally doing the work, and that will have a ripple effect in time. But as we know, like you said, it's taken many hundreds, thousands of years to arrive at this point in time, and it will be many hundreds, thousands, lifetimes to unravel and re-sew the fabric of our society, where it is not only is it a basic birthright for all women to feel that wholeness, but then that wholeness is actually modeled from childhood, and the systems support that same modeling, and we see a very vastly different world to the one that we see now. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have any parting words of wisdom? Is there anything else sitting in your awareness that you would love to share before we wrap up this beautiful conversation?
The one thing I would like to say is that we can feel, as you spoke then, of the women doing the work. And I feel like every woman in her own way is doing the work. And even if she feels like, well, I haven't carved out time for this and that to, make this change, even just experiencing the tension of wanting life to feel different, I think is doing the work. And so yeah, that's the piece, is to know that you are valued, you are doing it. We're all here cheering one another along to lead to the same vision, and that's the piece, is that you are doing the work, and to trust that, and to keep stepping just that one piece by one piece, and together we will it'll be what it is. But yeah, that's the piece that I wanted to share. So thank you for having me. Yeah, just always so lovely to chat with you, so thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Where can women practitioners, because your book is equally as powerful for practitioners in their work with women, teachers, therapists, where can we get a copy of it? And then where else can people connect with you?
So the best place, if you are an Australian resident, is to jump onto my website, taryngaudin.com. The book will be there. It is available through, say, Amazon, Booktopia, all of those large providers. If you would like to simply connect, Instagram is the place where I like to mostly hang out. So everywhere I am simply my name, Taryn Gaudin. I do have a Facebook page, but mostly Instagram. YouTube is also a place, if you would like to dive into some of those practices. There's many videos there of some of those beautiful practices that we've talked about. Yeah, so that's the main places.
Amazing. We'll make sure all of that is in the show notes so that women can dive in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.